It's 2 a.m. You should be asleep. Instead, you're lying in the dark, running a conversation from 3 days ago on a loop. Not because anything catastrophic happened. Maybe you said something slightly off. Maybe your tone was wrong. Maybe someone paused before answering, and you've been dissecting that pause ever since. You've rewritten the conversation 17 times in your head. The version where you said the perfect thing. The version where you stayed quiet. The version where you finally asked what you actually meant to ask. None of these versions exist, but your brain doesn't care. If this is you, you are not dramatic. You are not weak. You are not someone who needs to just relax. Something very specific is happening inside your mind, and once you understand it, the loop gets a little quieter. Let's start with why the brain replays at all. Your brain is not a camera. It doesn't store memories as fixed recordings. It stores them as reconstructions, incomplete files that it keeps opening and editing, and the files it opens most are the ones flagged as unresolved. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik Effect, first documented in 1927 by Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik. She discovered that people remember interrupted or incomplete tasks far better than completed ones. Your brain is obsessed with closure, and a conversation that didn't go the way you hoped, that's an open file. That's a task your brain refuses to mark as done, so it keeps reopening it, not to torture you, to try to finish it. But here's where it gets more specific. Not everyone replays conversations to the same degree. The people who replay the most tend to share something in common. They care deeply about how they come across to other people. Not out of vanity, out of something much older than vanity. Humans are wired for belonging. For thousands of years, being rejected by your group didn't just hurt. It was dangerous. And so your nervous system evolved to treat social missteps as potential threats. A stumbled sentence, an awkward silence, a look you couldn't read. Your brain files all of these under possible danger, and it reviews the file again and again, looking for the threat, looking for what it missed. Psychologists call this social threat monitoring. And in people with high empathy or anxious attachment styles, that monitoring system is turned up louder than average. It doesn't mean something is broken. It means your brain takes relationships seriously enough to lose sleep over them. Now here's the part most people don't talk about. There are actually two very different kinds of replaying. The first is ruminative replaying. This is the loop that goes nowhere. Same scene, same words, same spiral. No new information, no resolution, just the feeling of being stuck inside your own head like a room with no doors. This kind is exhausting, and over time it's linked to higher rates of anxiety and depression. Not because you're thinking too much, but because you're thinking in circles. The second kind is reflective replaying. This one is different. You revisit the conversation, but you're actually processing it. You notice something you didn't notice before. You understand the other person's reaction a little better. You find language for what you were actually trying to say. This kind of replaying is how emotionally intelligent people grow. It's the brain doing what it was designed to do, learn from social experience. The problem is that ruminative and reflective replaying feel almost identical from the inside. Both feel like thinking. Only one of them is going somewhere. Here's how to tell the difference. Ask yourself, am I learning something new each time I return to this, or am I just feeling bad on repeat? If it's the same loop with the same emotional weight every single time, that's rumination. And rumination isn't processing, it's a holding pattern. Your brain circling the airport, refusing to land. There's something else worth knowing about the people who replay most. They tend to be the same people who notice everything. The micro-expression that flickered across someone's face, the slight change in someone's tone, the half-second of hesitation before a reply. Most people miss these things entirely. You don't. And that sensitivity, that fine-tuned social radar, is genuinely rare. It makes you a better friend, a better reader of rooms, a better understander of people than most. But it also means your brain has more data to work with, more signals to analyze, more potential threats to review. The same wiring that makes you perceptive is the wiring that keeps you up at 2 a.m. That's not a coincidence. That's the cost of paying close attention in a world that mostly doesn't. So what do you do with the loop? First, give it a name. When you notice the replay starting, say to yourself, there's the open file. Not as a criticism, just as an observation. Naming it creates a small distance between you and the spiral. Second, ask what the loop actually needs. Sometimes it needs information. You genuinely don't know how the other person received what you said, and the only way to close the file is to ask them. Sometimes it needs permission. Permission to have been imperfect. Permission to have said the slightly wrong thing and still be someone worth knowing. Third, understand that closure doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes the conversation is over and the other person has moved on, and you are the only one still in the room. And the kindest thing you can do for yourself is decide to leave. Not because the conversation didn't matter, but because you do. You are not someone who overthinks because you're broken. You are someone who thinks carefully about people because people matter to you. That is not a flaw to fix. That is a depth most people never reach. The loop will quiet. It always does. And when it does, what remains is the part that was always true, that you were paying attention when most people weren't even in the room. If this felt like someone finally saying what you've never been able to explain about yourself, subscribe, because that's exactly what we do here every single week.